Welcome to Campfire Conspiracies, where the fire is warm but the stories send a chill down your spine.
Wait, did you hear that?
I told the plague doctor I think I have the flu. I told the plague doctor you didn't have it too. And then the plague doctor, he told me what to do. He said, social isolate, or she'll suffer the same fate. Social isolate, or else you'll spread the plague. I told the plague doctor, don't tell me what to do. In fact, I think I specifically said screw you. And then a week later, you came down with it too. Now it's too late to isolate. You have suffered the same fate. We should isolate so we don't spread the plague.
Boom! And that's how you start a podcast.
That's how you start an episode. We'll be here all week. Encore! Boo! Get off the stage. It's probably more like it, right?
Your brother.
Wait, are you saying my brother needs to get off the stage? Or...
No, your brother would tell you to get off the stage. Him listening to it will be like, why the fuck did Mum not stop at me? This song goes out to you, Mum. Oh, that's a nice tribute to your mum.
Hey guys, welcome to our third campfire.
So what are we starting?
Well, Summer. This episode marks the start of our fortnightly competition.
The competition in which I'm going to kick your ass.
You're going to kick my ass?
Mm-hmm.
What makes you think you're going to kick my ass?
Because I have better stories than you do.
And that's all they are, stories. There's no fact.
Oh, is the Wikipedia dude? The Wikipedia dude telling moi.
Actually, I'll have you know, I got a lot of my source, the source for the burn. I got a lot of it from the official CDC website. I also got it from history.com and the all reputable Snopes.
All right. Just so we have an idea of each other's research skills. Sorry about all the fiddling around. I'm just going to show you a touch of the research I did.
Okay, so I didn't print mine off, but I had tabs upon tabs upon tabs upon tabs.
My story's going to beat your story's ass.
That's what you think. Anyway, it's not up to us to decide. It is up to the listener.
The listeners that I love very much and would never hurt me. Especially on my birthday.
Oh, you cannot pull
it's
the birthday
my
card.
Birthday.
You can't pull the birthday card.
You wouldn't hurt me. You wouldn't vote against me on my birthday.
I just want to point out, this is getting recorded on her birthday. It's not even getting launched until 2 days after.
So it will be launched on my birthday week.
Oh no.
A belated present to me. Each fortnight we're uploading an episode that'll have a particular theme, but we'll do different stories on it. You're going to vote on all our social medias to tell us which of us won that episode. Tallying them all up at the end of 6 episodes, so for us this season.
At the end of the season, the loser has to do a challenge. They do a punishment.
And please be sending in your ideas for what that will be. It's not going to be me, so I'm not worried about this.
The winner gets crowned the best podcaster / lizard person.
And that is what's starting this very episode.
Don't be voting just because you like the person. Vote for the story that scared you, that made you feel something. Put some thought into it. Listen to the stories. Pick the person that actually made you feel scared.
He's just saying this because he's worried that there's going to be a lot of Team Summer going on. He's just trying to quench that.
Actually, I just want her to have a fair chance.
Oh.
Last week, I went first, which means Summer's going first.
I'm going to be going first.
Summer's going to be going first.
So this episode is around pandemics. I don't know why we chose that theme. Can you remember why we chose pandemics? I don't know.
Something about this year.
Oh, it's just not coming to me.
No, it's escaping my mind.
Me too.
It's just all thought about it. It's just flew from my mind.
I think it was because I got the flu last year and you worried about me.
No, it was something to do with bats.
Oh, don't even.
There was bats involved.
Oh.
What was it? Or was it 5G? Was that it?
No. All right, guys. So we are all having to social isolate right now, not spending any time with our friends, parts of our family, because we're all stuck at home. It sucks ass. We want to talk about different parts of history, different pandemics that we've had. And I guess it's kind of a reminder, like, we've gotten through this before, we'll get through it again. It's just getting through it. That's it.
Yeah. I guess also another way of looking at it is in the last couple hundred years, the world has changed in so many ways, but pandemics seem to keep coming.
Oh, yeah.
And though we do get through it, after we get through it, we go back to the same ways. Maybe this time we should change.
Well, actually, I would disagree with you.
Yeah?
Yeah. I think that pandemics are actually a time where you can affect change. What I'm talking about is the Black Death, or at least a part of that. I've been doing a bit of research, and from what I'm researching, there was a lot of things that changed because of the widespread death and the kind of inhumane treatment of some people. So things like the peasant revolt was actually considered to be a part of the Black Death. Actually, even things like there was a certain amount of environmental change, lowered population, all this sort of stuff that happened too. So, and in a way, we're seeing that now too, in that enough people don't want things to go back to the way they used to. I, for one of the good news stories that kind of gets me through this time is seeing nature kind of heal.
I like that too. I also like the memes that come with it. Like the ones that say that the sky is now so clear you can see the universal logo through the sky.
Or the Death Star.
Or the Death Star.
Yeah.
Anyway, maybe we should get into your story.
My tale is set in the 17th century when the dreaded Black Death was hitting Europe once again. Many of those who tried to treat the afflicted throughout Europe were known as plague doctors.
They're those ones with the funny beak things, right?
Yes. If you are unaware of the eerie sight of a plague doctor, I suggest you quickly Google their image. Referred to at the time as Dr. Beaks.
They kind of look like Death Eaters with a...
They don't.
They do. Okay, they look like steampunk Death Eaters.
Definitely steampunk.
With a top hat.
Yes.
Like a flat-brimmed top hat. And a crow's skull for a face. Or maybe more magpie.
Crow, yeah.
Yeah. It's a beak, so it's a bird's... Yeah. They're things of nightmares. Especially if you're young. It used to scare the shit out of me when I was a kid.
So you do know?
I know what the beak is. I know what they look like. I just don't know anything about the Black Plague.
Alright. Well, these men treated the victims of plague with their iconic outfit as their protection from the poisoned air, which was considered the cause of plague at the time. I thought it might be interesting to consider a day in the life of one of these men. Before the plague, this man was a florist. Little need for them now.
Cool.
He quickly lost most of his family too. Wow. Grieving, he decided to take the opportunity to become a plague doctor, as medical training wasn't necessary. After all, the treatments he could provide were basic. He spent his time with patients, mostly witnessing wills, taking messages, and recording the deaths for public record.
Wow.
That's all he could do. But before he could go out to work within the town that hired him, he had to don his uniform. putting on his breeches connected to his boots, tucking in his shirt, praying the fleas won't sneak into his outfit as their bites hurt. Then wrapping his body in a full-length leather coat and gloves. His mask takes time to prepare. Taking the mask, he places herbs, spices, and other items into the large beak of the mask to stop the smell of the plague and offer further protection.
Kind of like nature's filter.
Yes. Did you know, fun fact?
Probably not then.
One of the things, so there's a whole bunch of things that I found listed as the herbs, the spices, the concoction of what was in their beaks. One of them was wormwood, which is what makes absinthe. Yeah.
Cool.
Placing it over his head, he looks through spectacles to find his brimmed hat, a symbol of his station, and places upon his head. He believes this will help protect him, this uniform. At the door, he picks up a wooden rod and leaves.
What's the wooden rod?
Yeah. 1 second.
Is that a 6 meter stick? 6 feet stick?
What's a 6 feet stick?
You know, like how we have to say
Oh,
stick
like
away.
a 6 feet, yeah. There is a lot of, yeah, honestly, there's a lot of similarities with having a mask. Sure, we don't have a beak anymore, but we still protect our mouths.
Yeah.
We still protect our hands, we glove them. Quite a lot of the things that we ridicule about the outfit that they wear, it does make sense when you consider the context in which they were doing it. It's still rather the context in which we do it now. So.
Exactly. It's just different materials.
And different ways of thinking back then to what would protect them. Walking through the streets, using the rod to keep the hordes of victims at bay, calling out to him, "End my suffering, the pain is too great." He knew soon they'll be relieved of their suffering by death, or God's mercy survive. He sees the faces of patients that only a few days ago had only a cough and a slight pain, were now at death's door. At least he knew he could help on his first visit for the day, a man who wanted to update his will. His son had passed before him, and now a new heir must be decided before his end comes. He knew he'd most likely be this man's only and last visitor. There was importance in that. Approaching the man, he couldn't see any visible buboes. They must be underneath the covers. After talking with the man and agreeing to his new will, he took his rod to inspect the buboes. That he saw the blackened skin, the large lumps all over his upper thighs. They had already burst. Did he do this to himself? He saw a bucket placed beside his bed, full of fluid. He did what he could to provide comfort, but his pain was clear across his tormented face. This position is not glamorous. He imagined the pits created at the local church for these unfortunate souls, their bodies left to rot, and wondered at his own fate. This garb didn't save other doctors he knew of. After losing so many himself, death might be a relief. But that unimaginable pain beforehand, would he be fortunate enough to escape this fate? As he inspected other victims, the scent within his beak were fading, and the foul smell of the infected was starting to reach him. His eyes watered from the contradicting and strong smells hitting him. His sweat now soaking through his shirt under the heavy leather. All day he was seen only the faces of those in agonizing pain, black and sick. And of course, death. He began to cough hard. This is it, he thought. The foul air has reached me. And within the week he had passed, like many other big doctors. Whilst this was just some imagined man, his profession's reputation has lived on, and the plague doctor is used to ridicule medieval medical practices, even though it actually wasn't used in medieval times. Credit for the design has gone to Charles Delorme, a physician who cared for many royals' medical needs. And honestly, looking at his outfit, I see the idea of a historical hazmat suit or maybe even modern medical garb.
Yeah.
And the idea of poisoned air, while sounds superstitious to us now, isn't entirely untrue. Right now, we cover our mouths due to droplets in the air.
It's not so far-fetched now because you do have acid rain, you do have, toxic gases that are man-made, or, sometimes not man-made. Sulfuric acid, enough of that ingested, it's a gas in the air. Enough of that can make you very sick. It can even kill you. So it's not too far-fetched for them to believe that it is something toxic in the air that is causing it, even if it wasn't actually that in the case.
Yeah. Of course, there's also the Venice Carnival, where the iconic mask is used more in cultural celebration. I would adore to attend this at one time in my life, though ironically, due to COVID-19, the celebrations this year were cut short. And whilst we shouldn't downplay this current pandemic, the Black Death was truly deadly. It was caused by the bacterium Yersinia pestis, responsible for several deadly pandemics, starting with the plague of Justinian, killing 10,000 people from Constantinople during 561 AD. Secondly, and most famously, the Black Death, killing at least a third of Europeans during 1334 to 1374, then intermittently causing further pandemics through to the 19th century, totaling 70 million deaths. Then the third pandemic that spread through to Asia between the 19th and 20th centuries. And even now there's still an average of over 1,000 per year infected. There were 3 different diseases you could be infected with. Bubonic plague, your best chance of survival with only 50-50 survival rate. But you would still experience excruciating plague from those black buboes. You would experience pain mainly in the abdomen, your muscles, obviously cough that could include blood. You would feel fevers, chills, fatigue, malaise, and as described, possibly diarrhea, nausea, vomiting. Also common could be generally bleeding, delirium, headaches, phlegm, shortness of breath, and of course swollen or tender lymph nodes, as that is where the buboes would attach. Pneumonic plague dramatically lessens your chances with a mortality rate of 90%. Attacking your lungs, you only had days before death. Septicemic plague. You would certainly die if you were infected through your blood. There were different ways of infection. Bubonic was usually through fleas, rats, and there's also ingestion of contaminated food, fluids, tissues, and those airborne droplets. Without an understanding of germs, you can understand how it could so easily spread, causing such devastation. Nowadays, we treat it with simple antibiotics. That's it. Obviously, there is so much to talk about when you're considering the Black Death, and I could talk about this forever. I deliberately chose a profession within the Black Death as I believe we have respect right now for those helping to combat this pandemic, COVID-19. And it can give great perspective to discuss similar roles, medical roles, during similar times, as in a pandemic. Unlike these men, though, I hope today's medical professionals are given far more respect in hindsight in the future when historians judge this pandemic. So what do you think? Know a bit more about the plague doctors now?
Yep. Also want to point out that being the age I am now, I'm not scared of the outfits. I actually kind of want to make one. They're pretty fucking dope.
As you know, I actually have texted my nan and asked her if she knows anyone that could help me. I found this great pattern for more of a fabric as opposed to the leather that I would love to have in maybe more colourful fabrics than the usual black or white that you see in those images. And I would love to have that, especially right now. That could be my mask as I go out for my essential shopping.
I think I wouldn't wear leather just because we live in Australia. Wearing leather is just a recipe for disaster unless you're a biker.
They were in Italy. It's not like that's a cold climate. That's why I wanted to mention the fact that wearing...
Depending on the time of the year, though, it still can get quite cold in Italy.
Mm.
And I mean, it's the same over here too, just nowhere near as cold unless you're in the mountains.
I think we have them beat.
Yeah. But yeah, like I couldn't wear leather. So like I would wear like a cotton hood or something like it would literally be a fashion choice. It wouldn't be something to wear to keep me... The only thing that would keep me protected would be the mask. Yeah. Because it would have layers and it would have a filter in the middle and...
See that, and that. So we have modern ideas of filters, exactly, and different ways we can stop that transmission. Back then, their idea, well, for one thing, unfortunately, the Black Plague, it stank. Freaking stank. But there was so many different herbs, spices, like I said, different things they would put into these beaks. And that's what the beak is for, to hold those things so it has also enough time before reaching your nose to absorb, to, I guess, mix together.
And also it's not be so strong. It's like it's not right in your face then.
I imagine it would actually be fairly strong. There's certain recipes that I was looking at, and it was like 50 different things they would put in it. Yeah. And like wormwood, I think I do remember that being pretty stinky itself. Honeys, like I said, just all types of herbs and spices themselves. Like when you're in it in the pure kind of form, the powdered or whatever form, it can be pretty potent. So I imagine it was severely potent. Yeah. That they would put in at the start of the day the start of them leaving their lodgings, which was usually paid by the government, the royalty. That's who I guess they were employed by, and usually then hired out to different townships that might have needed them.
Cool.
But then there's also stories. So I mention a guy who I'm hoping was more the norm of plague doctors. Yeah, there was definitely charlatans. That whole not needing a prophetic medical training was true. The guy who created this ensemble, he was a physician. He was a medically trained physician who was known for for his care of the royals, of several different royals.
Yeah, so he should know what he's talking about.
He should. However, yeah, quite a few of the big doctors were, there was only so much you could do. So the need for medical training wasn't high, and they were, yeah, as I said in there, their roles weren't always medical anyway. There were for witnessing wills, for taking that tally, for doing what they could to, I suppose, care. But there was no cure. There was no real understanding of what it was.
Yeah, exactly.
Apart from, poisoned air, which, I could, there's a whole book in just their idea of medical science and what poisoned air even was.
Back in those days, they would have been blaming other things, you know.
Oh yeah, God was a massive thing.
God, yeah.
Massive thing was that they must have sinned.
Yeah, someone in the town must have sinned and doomed them all, or they would all, not righteous enough or whatever. This
information more comes from the Black Death, the medieval pandemic. All right, so these were some of the ideas of what caused the plague at the time. Movement of planets, punishment, of course, from God. That bad smell.
Yep.
Enemies who had poisoned the wells. Listen to these ones though. These are some of my favorites.
Yeah.
Staring at a victim.
Yep,
just staring at a victim, or wearing pointed shoes.
I don't know if you could see it. Well, you obviously couldn't see my face just then. Someone could. The pointed shoes things makes no fucking sense. None.
Strangers to the village, they were often blamed.
But strangers makes a little bit more sense. Like you move into a village or you pass through a village, you can...
Wasn't completely untrue.
Yeah, you can easily spread.
Just like now, it's actually amazing reading some of the different quarantine measures they would do. In Italy was most interesting. So yeah, different quarantine measures they would do, including... so for a lot of them, including Italy, it was a 40-day quarantine, which actually would have been enough time to stop the spread if mainly ships coming in, which was the main spread of the disease through Europe, was through ships. The rats would be in them, the fleas would be on the rats.
Yeah.
There was quarantines, there was social isolating in the medieval as well as during the 17th century, 18th onwards. All these different measures, it was more of...
See, that's the thing. It's not a new concept.
It's really not.
Social distancing. So I don't understand why it's so hard for people to grasp that it's what you need to do.
Oh, that's an entire other episode. The fact that he would try to reduce his contact. Like I said, I look at that and I do see a bit of a hazmat suit going on.
Yeah.
I do see that he is trying to control his contact with infected people. Because there was a few different ways, definitely including the fleas, rat bites, technically also cat, anyone who had those fleas, that would also transmit it to you. So it's not a catch-all. And then obviously then, just because you have the suit, you also need to understand cross-contamination, all these things that are just commonplace now. But the general ideas they had were amazing. I thought, we have this idea of them as dumb, and the plague doctors themselves as dumb and superstitious. But there is a lot of medical science is just this idea of poisoned air and everything. No, take the religion out of it. Take all that. We've come a long way, but it's easy. It's easy now in hindsight to go, they were idiots.
Yeah.
I actually think there was a lot of sense, even with all that God-fearing happening. And like I said, we praise medical professionals now. Will our historians? Will, 200, 300 years from now, will we know more about bacterium, about antibiotics? Will antibiotics become completely inferior?
Yeah.
All this kind of stuff.
And the thing is, people are still God-fearing now, and some people still believe that it's because of God that this is happening. That the Earth is punishing us, or God's punishing us for the way we've treated the Earth.
Well, one of the things that interests me was the fact that, like, medical masks, they have changed obviously considerably, but they have always been something there.
Yeah.
Before the beaked mask, there were other forms of masks that medical professionals would use.
Yeah.
Gloves, same sort of thing. They didn't have an understanding of germ theory, but there was some kind of acknowledgement of
having an extra layer between contact with people.
Yeah, and that, so polluted air. There was some kind of an understanding that hygiene, that a dirty environment.
Yeah.
There was a correlation there. They don't have all the pieces of the puzzle, but they were not, I would not consider these people stupid.
No. But yeah, that was a really, I love how the way that you present your topics is always in the form of a story, whether it's all story or it's,
a little bit from column A, a little from column B.
Truth put into a story so it's easy to digest.
Yeah.
I, however, prefer to go more of the fact route. Or as close to the fact.
Ironic.
Yeah, I mean, my ideal profession would be an author, so it is really ironic. But
I meant more the Wikipedia, but this is also true.
Well, I said as close to the fact. But I didn't get anything from Wikipedia this time. I don't think. But my topic is the Spanish flu. Another big hitter, yeah. Quite a few people died. Quite a few people were infected too. I chose this one because though it started in 1918, it ended in 1919, which is 100 years before COVID-19 was first detected.
All right.
Even though COVID-19 wasn't really a big thing until a month or two into the start of this year, the first case was actually found at the end of 2019 in December. According to the official government website for the Center for Disease Control, or the CDC, the 1918 virus, more commonly known as the Spanish flu, happened in 3 waves. The first happened in spring 1918, the second in fall 1918, and the third in winter 1919. According to History.com, it was the most severe pandemic in history. It spanned from 1918 to 1919, and it's estimated to have infected somewhere in the number of 500 million people worldwide. That's 500 million people, which was a lot for those 2 years. Like, you think about it now, we've got 7.6 billion people in the world, I think it is, and growing. 500 million at that time was a quarter of the world's population.
Holy crap, yeah.
It's also thought to have claimed the lives of around 50 million people. Though the name of the pandemic is the Spanish flu, the rest of Europe suffered at its hand, along with the United States and parts of Asia. Before long, it spread swiftly around the world, and contrary to popular belief, the Spanish flu probably didn't even originate in Spain. It's believed to have arrived in Spain from France because of heavy railroad traffic of Spanish and Portuguese migrant workers to and from France. However, even that isn't thought to be the original source. The geographic origin is still undetermined, but it has been suggested to have originated in places like East Asia, Europe, and the CDC website hints that it may have actually started in Kansas, America, and was spread by the soldiers that went to war during the final year of World War I. There was a lot of them. Fun fact 1. A characteristic of the virus that wasn't attributed to the common flu was that the high death rate was centered around healthy adults from 15 to 34 years old. It lowered the average life expectancy of the time in the US by more than 12 years.
Whoa.
The first wave. According to the same article on the CDC website, the first outbreak of the flu-like illness was detected in March 1918 in the US. More than 100 cases were reported at Camp Funston in Fort Riley, Kansas. During the start of the first wave, hundreds of thousands of US soldiers were traveling across the Atlantic to deploy for war. This mass troop movement is considered to be part of what contributed to the global spread of the flu. Fun fact 2. The reason it spread so quickly through the troops is because of the close quarters they kept. They weren't quarantined. They were put in a tent together in a quarantine-like situation, but they weren't quarantined properly. When an infected person coughs or sneezes, it sends more than 500,000 virus particles out, and because of the troops being in close proximity to each other, it was inevitable that it would spread so quickly. The first wave resembled a typical flu epidemic. Those who were high risk were the sick and elderly, while the young and healthier recovered easily. Fun fact 3. More people died during the 1918 pandemic than the total number of military and civilian deaths that resulted from World War I.
We've really got to review our ideas of fun facts. We're horrible people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, it's good to know that war wasn't the main cause of death, though. Not saying war's good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it kind of was, because it helped the spread, so...
Well, yeah, I guess, yeah, war would be the main cause of death.
And I think I heard that, so after World War I had ended, the Great War had ended, people started obviously cheering, celebrating all together, and the sort of quarantine that was in place was ruined, and a second pandemic pretty much started. Is that right?
I don't know. The second wave. According to Wikipedia, the second wave was much more deadly than the first. By August, when the virus hit France and Sierra Leone, the second wave meant the virus had mutated to a much more deadly form. October 1918 is recorded as the month with the highest fatality rate of the entire pandemic. The second wave is responsible for most of the deaths in the US. Fun fact 4. Due to the fact that the Spanish flu broke out in the midst of World War I, there was a shortage of medical personnel in the US, as most had gone to help with the war. Because of this, the economy suffered due to businesses and factories having to close after the sickness amongst their workers became too great. Originally, to maintain morale of the troops in World War I, the early reports of illness were censored, especially in Germany, the United Kingdom, France, and the United States. Newspapers in neutral Spain were able to report the effects of the epidemic.
Good journalism.
Because the king of the time had come down with it. This unfortunately gave the impression that Spain was hit the hardest in the first few months compared to everywhere else. The third wave. The third wave of illness happened during the winter and spring of 1919. While not the most deadly of the three waves, it added to the death toll of the pandemic and didn't subside until summer of 1919. At the time, there were no effective drugs or vaccines to treat the Spanish flu. Much like today with the threat of COVID-19, citizens were told to wear masks, while schools, theatres, and businesses were closed. Unlike these days, though, makeshift morgues had bodies of the deceased piled up in them until the Spanish flu had finally ended its deadly reign. To finish, here's a few misconceptions about the Spanish flu.
All right.
The virus killed most people who were infected with it. Not true. The vast majority of those who contracted it actually survived. It was really only about 20% of the infected that died in the US.
I mean, that's still just not acceptable, is it? Like,
No.
That's still too many people.
Of course, but you know what I mean.
I know.
If you were going to go 50-50 or 20-80, what would you prefer? Number 2. Therapies of that time had little impact on the disease.
No, yeah.
While there were no specific antiviral therapies, the same is still true today. Most medical care for the flu actually doesn't aim to cure those infected, rather to support the patients instead. It's hypothesized that many of these deaths may actually have been caused by aspirin poisoning.
Yeah, so you've already actually told me this.
Yeah. Patients were given up to 30 grams per day to help, but today's standards say that 4 grams is considered the maximum safe daily dosage. 26 grams over the legal dose. It wasn't the case back then, but could you imagine how many doctors would get their licenses, how many nurses would get their licenses revoked? Number 3, widespread immunization ended the pandemic. False. Flu immunization wasn't practiced in 1918, so it couldn't have attributed to ending the Spanish flu pandemic.
Vaccinate.
So yeah, one thing that I did notice, obviously, as I mentioned it, is there was a lot of similarities with the Spanish flu, or at least how they dealt with the Spanish flu, to how they're dealing with it now. They're doing it a little bit better. But one thing that people should take away from it is if you're traveling in large quantities, you're gonna spread it.
Yep. Same with the Black Death.
Stay inside.
So back then, it was ships for the Black Death that spread the disease. War spread it for Spanish flu. Aeroplanes, main vehicle right now. It is the spread that we are trying to stop. So it's unfortunate, and I desperately hate having to hear how many people have lost their jobs, how many people's mental ill health is being greatly affected.
Yeah.
There is a reason for it.
2 months of staying at home.
Let's hope it's 2 months.
I'm just saying, a couple months of staying home will decrease the odds of this thing spreading and lasting longer than it needs to. If everyone just did what they were told and only went out when they needed to, absolutely needed to, bare essentials, once a fortnight, and got everything they needed once a fortnight.
So history really has a habit of repeating itself.
It does.
That is what I have learnt today.
Yeah.
That is my overall fun fact.
You're just upset because I had more fun facts than you.
But I still won. Oh, yeah.
You need to be the judge of that. Who won?
The birthday girl.
You can't vote for her because it's her birthday.
Yeah, I mean, you could, totally, if you wanted to.
That's called donkey voting, and it's the reason we have a shitty Prime Minister.
Now you'll want to obviously know how to vote. Please hop on to our social medias. Tell us which one you liked best. We have Instagram at Campfire Conspiracies, on our Facebook at Campfire Conspiracies Podcast, and of course Twitter at Camp Conspiracy. And of course, if you have some of your own scary stories, send them in campfireconspiraciespodcast@gmail.com. We'd of course want to hear them.
Anything. Cryptids, aliens, Area 51, pandemics like we've spoken about today.
Oh, I could totally do another pandemic episode. We of course would like to thank all the nurses, the wardies, the doctors, everyone working at hospitals and clinics trying to fight this current pandemic. We are so grateful for the work you are doing. And
we hope you found the stories intriguing and interesting and maybe even a little bit scary.
Of course.
Don't forget to vote.
Don't forget to vote.
Very important. We hope you'll join us next time when we talk about something a little close to home, but also a little historical.
A little bit spooky.
A little bit spooky.
We hope to see you at the next campfire.